More interviews today at the Woody Hayes Athletic Center as Ohio State keeps rolling along in spring practice. Spring game a week from Saturday, so we're getting close to the end of the spring. And one of the positions that we had big questions about coming into the spring, I'm Nathan Baird from cleveland.com, Stephen Means, Andrew Gillis, was linebacker, and finding out what sort of depth they were going to build there and exactly how things were going to work out as far as who's going to play and who's not going to play. And I had that question for James Laurinaitis today because over the course of this spring, we've heard a lot of sort of just very organic accolades or praise for individual guys in that room. There's the obvious ones, the Sonny Styles. We know Cody Simon's coming back. CJ Hicks is coming along. But like Gabe Powers' name gets brought up. Arvell Reese's name gets brought up. There are a lot of people excited about individual guys, and it's not like we're necessarily asking first. And that's always an indication that something could be going on, that the coaches are bringing them up. So is it realistic that you could play 5 guys? And he said yes. It's going to be sort of a week-by-week basis. He thinks even the starters are going to be a week-by-week basis. Now, that's the thing he says in the spring. We'll see what that looks like in the fall. Because I did follow up also and ask, this doesn't sound like something James Laurinaitis, the player, would have enjoyed, right? Like not knowing if you're going to start week to week, having that whole jumbled up. And he said, well, that's how he kind of thought every week he thought he was always getting recruited over. 3-time All-American, thought he was always going to get recruited over. So that's how he approached practice, and that made him a better player, made him a better NFL player. So I guess I'll start with you, Steven. We hear this a lot, whether it's the receivers, whether it's the linebacker room. Oh, we're going to play a bunch of guys. I think we've heard it every spring since I've been here, and it's always the same 3 guys or 2 guys. So do you think, from what you're hearing James Laurinaitis say, the way he's talking about this, and maybe importantly, the makeup of the room, is it realistic that they could rotate 5 guys somewhat consistently this fall?
All the players and coaches keep bringing out the fact that this is going to be the longest season ever as part of the reason for why as well. It's a yes and no thing. Remember back in 2019 when they were blowing everybody out, and so it felt like the second teamers were getting all this football? I think it might be like that, where outside of Oregon, Penn State, and the Michigan game, I'm not sure about the other 9 games on the schedule even being competitive. So that might be true, right? So Cody Simon and CJ Hicks and Sonny Styles might only need to play 2 quarters and a half. And then for the second half of the third quarter and the whole fourth quarter, you're seeing Arvell Reese and Gabe Powers, even the freshmen, maybe getting opportunities in those situations. And then we get to the end of the year and we get into next season and days going, man, so many guys got reps because a lot of these games are lopsided. I think we might see that situation. But in those other 3 games where we're sure they're probably going to be competitive, I think that's when you see what we're used to seeing here, where the top of the room is just kind of out there, especially at linebacker, because we haven't seen any level of rotation in the 5 years that we've been together. So I think the schedule allows them to get guys more reps in game simply because it's not going to be a competitive schedule. But let's see what happens when you play Oregon. That's going to be the first sign of, is this a real rotation or is this just we're up by 40 rotation?
Which isn't a rotation like that. So I think your answer is no, because if you're just bringing guys in as a second unit when it's a blowout, that's not a rotation. It's more about, are you playing, rotating 5 guys in? Are you really starting any number of guys, any one of 2 or 3, 4 guys on a week-to-week basis? Obviously, you have to start at least 2. They have rotated. We saw in 2019, especially in 2020, the Baird Browning, Tough Borland rotation, early down, later in games, that sort of thing. So we've seen a microcosm of that, but James Laurinaitis wasn't around for that. Nobody who is on staff now was around for that, and they certainly didn't do it the last couple of years. But Andrew, when he's talking about the one thing that makes me think it might have a little bit more legs is Cody Simon is definitely established in the middle. Sonny Styles is still learning to play will linebacker. CJ Hicks is still sort of coming into his own as to how good he could be. Gabe Powers still hasn't done it at this level. Arvell Reese certainly hasn't done it at this level, being just a second-year guy. So there's a lot more unknowns here, and maybe early in the season you are mixing it up a little bit more, and perhaps the rotation dwindles over the course of the season, almost like a basketball rotation that sort of dwindles as you get later in the year.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And, I mean, I'm going to echo a lot of what Steven said. I think when you look at this linebacking core, right, you have Cody Simon, and then we talked about this with it's matchup dependent, it's week dependent. Are you playing a good team that runs the ball? Are you playing a bad team that runs the ball? I just think that there's so many different things you could do. So you're right. It is one of those things, I think, is CJ Hicks, let's say he just transforms into the linebacker that you cannot keep off the field and he has to play and you have to have him on the field at all times because there's no way you can justify keeping him off the field. Well, then your rotation's not going to be 5. I'm sorry. Sorry to Gabe Powers and everybody else. It's not going to be 5 if that's the case, because that just tells me that They don't have that second guy right now. They don't have that guy that they're looking for. But I do think it's going to be a rotation maybe early in the year where it's, hey, look, it's the second quarter and let's try to get some guys in and see, hey, look, we did it. Hey, everybody, congratulations. We are rotating these guys in. I told you. And then when you get to Oregon, that's the big game. That's the first time you want to see it. Maybe Iowa you use as a dry run. That's going to be the game where you shorten the bench. That's going to be the game where you play 2, maybe 3 guys. You're playing 2 different types of offenses there, so maybe that's a little bit different. But I don't think you can go into your bigger games in the season, specifically the Oregon game, the Penn State game, the Michigan game. I don't think you can do that and then just have 5 guys rotating through. So I just think this is a thing where it sounds great in practice. It sounds great in theory, I should say. It sounds great in theory. It sounds great as something that you want to try out. It sounds great to the guys that are competing for that job where you're saying, hey, guys, you can still do it. You can still get to that position. But when you actually get to the game, you're not going to want to do that. When it's the third quarter and it's somebody else's turn for rotation, it's 14-14 against Oregon, you are not sending in guys that you're not confident in. You are sending in the best players you can. So I think the rotation, it's one of those things where you see early, not late.
We'll see. When we saw some guys who, C.J. Hicks, Sonny Styles, they looked really good in like blitz package situations at the open practice we saw last Saturday. I'm wondering if the spring game gives us a more conventional look at where the linebackers are right now and how they look. Ryan Day said everybody who's healthy is going to play, so it involves Cody Simon, but maybe some of the veterans get out of the way and these younger guys, these less experienced guys anyway, get a little bit more run. We'll see. We'll be talking about that on Buckeye Talk heading into the game. So get that where you're going to find podcast and get the text 614-350-3315. News, intel, analysis, 7 days a week from cleveland.com.